I was standing in the hospital corridor, staring at my hands still trembling from adrenaline, when my sister's mother-in-law grabbed my wrist and hissed through clenched teeth, "If you tell anyone what really happened in that room, I'll make sure your entire family pays." The fluorescent lights above flickered twice, casting shadows across her furious face. I wanted to pull away, to run, but then a nurse I'd never seen before stepped between us and said something that made the older woman's expression crumble into pure terror. Too late. The cameras caught everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why my sister's mother-in-law would threaten me in a hospital hallway, you need to know what happened 3 months earlier, the day my sister stood in front of 40 people at her baby shower and called me a failed pre-med dropout who couldn't save a houseplant, let alone a human life. 3 months earlier, I was sitting in my small apartment, the one my family called that sad little box you're wasting your life in, when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Not a call. Never a call anymore. Just a cold, clinical message. Your sister's baby shower is Saturday at 2 p.m. She says you can come if you promise not to make it about yourself. I stared at those words for a full minute, my coffee going cold in my hand. Make it about myself. That was she coming from the sister who had spent the last 6 years making sure every family gathering became a stage for her achievements, her medical residency, her engagement to a neurosurgeon, her picture-perfect pregnancy announced with a professionally shot video that went semi-viral. Meanwhile, I had quietly withdrawn from pre-med during my junior year, switching to nursing after watching my grandmother die in a hospital where the doctors barely looked at her, but a single night shift nurse held her hand and made her last hours bearable. My family never forgave me for that choice. To them, I hadn't pivoted, I had failed, and my sister, Rebecca, made sure I never forgot it. I almost didn't go to the baby shower. I sat on my couch that Saturday morning, already dressed in the pale blue dress I'd bought specifically because it was neutral and unremarkable, the kind of outfit designed to help me blend into the wallpaper. My best friend Marissa had texted me 3 times, "You don't owe them anything. Stay home, watch trashy TV, eat ice cream, live your life." But there was something about the way my mother's message had been phrased. She says, "You can come if..." That hooked into an old, familiar wound. The implied conditionality of my presence. The suggestion that I was a problem to be managed rather than a sister to be celebrated alongside. So I went, telling myself I'd stay for an hour, smile politely, and leave before the game started. I drove to my parents' house, the sprawling colonial where Rebecca and I had grown up, where every room still displayed her academic awards and medical school acceptance letters in frames, while my nursing degree hung in the downstairs bathroom, half hidden behind the door. When I walked in, the living room had been transformed into something out of a Pinterest board. Blush, pink, and gold everything. A dessert table that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and at least 40 people milling around with champagne flutes and perfectly styled hair. Rebecca spotted me immediately. She was standing near the fireplace, one hand resting on her perfectly round belly, wearing a white, flowing dress that made her look like some kind of maternal goddess. Her smile was bright and wide as she waved me over, but I'd known her long enough to see the tightness around her eyes, the way her jaw was clenched, just slightly. "Oh, you actually came," she said loudly enough for the people around her to hear. "I wasn't sure you'd make it. I know how busy you must be with ... work." The pause before work was deliberate, weighted. A woman beside her, one of Rebecca's doctor friends from the hospital, I assumed, gave me a polite, pitying smile. "What do you do?" she asked, her tone honey. Before I could answer, Rebecca jumped in. "She's a nurse. Well, still in school, technically. It's taking a while." My stomach dropped. I had graduated 8 months ago. I was working full-time in a pediatric ICU, but correcting her here, in front of her guests, would make me look defensive, exactly what she wanted. So I smiled, nodded, and excused myself to get a drink. As I walked away, I heard Rebecca laugh, that musical, performative laugh she reserved for audiences, and say something I couldn't quite make out, followed by a ripple of polite laughter from her circle. I found refuge near the kitchen, pouring myself sparkling water and pretending to be fascinated by the elaborate cupcake tower. My mother appeared beside me, her face already set in that expression I knew too well, the one that said she was about to criticize me while pretending to be helpful. "You look tired," she said, straightening the collar of my dress without asking. "Are you sleeping enough?" You know, Rebecca manages to look put together even with all her responsibilities. I took a slow breath. "I worked a double shift yesterday, Mom. A 6-year-old came in with sepsis. We spent 11 hours stabilizing him." She waved her hand dismissively, as if I'd just told her about a mundane grocery trip. "Well, that's the job you chose. Rebecca's residency is incredibly demanding too, but she still makes time for self. You should try yoga or something." Before I could respond, the room suddenly erupted in excited chatter. Rebecca's mother-in-law, Patricia, a tall, severe woman with silver hair pulled back so tight it looked painful, had arrived carrying an enormous gift wrapped in cream-colored paper with a gold bow the size of my head. Everyone flocked to her like she was royalty. Patricia worked as a hospital administrator at the same prestigious medical center where Rebecca was completing her residency and where her son, Daniel, worked as a neurosurgeon. She had money, connections, and the kind of cold authority that made people instinctively straighten their posture around her. Patricia greeted Rebecca with a delicate air kiss on each cheek, then turned to survey the room with an appraising gaze that landed briefly on me before moving on, as if I were a piece of furniture she'd already decided wasn't worth noticing. My mother rushed over to fawn over her, and I watched as the two of them spoke in low voices, Patricia's perfectly manicured hand gesturing toward the gift table. Then my mother nodded, smiled too widely, and walked back toward me with renewed purpose. "Patricia brought the most generous gift," Mom said, her voice bright and pointed, "a fully funded college savings account for the baby. Can you imagine? That's the kind of family Rebecca is marrying into. Real success, real stability." The implication hung in the air like smoke. "Not like you. Not like your choices." I gripped my glass tighter, feeling the familiar burn of shame and anger mixing in my chest, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "That's very generous," I said evenly. My mother's smile faltered slightly. She'd been hoping for more. Before she could push further, Rebecca called everyone to attention. She stood in the center of the room, Daniel beside her with his hand protectively on her lower back, and Patricia watching from her throne-like armchair with an expression of cool satisfaction. "Thank you all so much for being here," Rebecca began, her voice clear and confident. "Daniel and I are so grateful for your love and support as we prepare to welcome our daughter." The room erupted in polite applause. Rebecca waited for it to die down, her smile never wavering, and then she continued. "I also want to take a moment to acknowledge how lucky we are to be surrounded by such accomplished people. Doctors, surgeons, professionals who understand the value of dedication and commitment." Her eyes found mine across the room, and something cold slithered down my spine. It takes a special kind of person to push through the challenges of medical training, to not give up when things get hard. And I'm so proud to be part of a community that values excellence. The applause came again, louder this time. I felt my face flush hot. She hadn't said my name. She didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew our history, knew that I'd left pre-med, knew that Rebecca considered it a personal embarrassment. My mother was nodding enthusiastically beside Patricia, who sat with her hands folded in her lap, a small, knowing smile on her lips. Then Rebecca's gaze landed directly on me, and her smile widened. "Of course, we're grateful for everyone here, no matter what path they've chosen, even if some paths are less conventional." The room went quiet for just a beat too long. Someone coughed. I saw a few people glance at me and then quickly look away. My hands were shaking now, so I set down my glass before I could drop it. Marissa had been right. I should have stayed home. I turned toward the door, ready to leave quietly and preserve whatever dignity I had left, when Rebecca called out again. "Oh, wait, before we start the games, I have to share something funny." My stomach twisted. I knew that tone. That was the tone she used when she was about to humiliate someone under the guise of a harmless story. "So, my sister is here today," Rebecca said, gesturing toward me with a laugh that sounded light and affectionate to anyone who didn't know better. "And I just have to tell you all, she used to be, we were going to be doctors together. That was the plan." A few people made sympathetic sounds. Some smiled encouragingly at me, not yet understanding where this was going. But then she dropped out, Rebecca continued, her voice taking on a mock sympathetic tone. And I get it, medical school is hard. It's not for everyone. Some people just aren't cut out for it. She paused for effect, letting the words settle. Now she's a nurse, well, trying to be one, and honestly, good for her. I mean, someone has to do the less demanding jobs, right? The room had gone completely still. A few people looked uncomfortable now, shifting in their seats. But Rebecca wasn't done. She stepped closer to where I stood, frozen near the doorway, her hand still resting on her belly, her smile never faltering. I just think it's important to know your limitations, she said, her voice saccharine sweet. My sister learned hers. And that's okay. Not everyone can handle the pressure of saving lives. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred at the edges, and I felt 40 pairs of eyes on me, some pitying, some curious, some silently agreeing with her assessment. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself, to say something, anything, but my throat had closed up completely. Rebecca tilted her head, feigning concern. Don't look so upset. I'm just being honest. You always said you valued honesty, right? That's when I heard it. A single, sharp laugh from the back of the room. Not mocking, something else. Something that cut through the suffocating tension like a knife. Everyone turned to look. Standing near the archway to the dining room was a man I'd never seen before. He was maybe in his mid-50s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks, with silver-streaked dark hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen a lot and wasn't easily impressed. He wasn't holding a champagne flute or a gift. He wasn't dressed for a baby shower, and he was looking directly at Rebecca with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between amusement and contempt. I'm sorry, Patricia said sharply, rising from her chair with the authority of someone used to controlling rooms. Who are you? This is a private event. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Martin Chun, he said simply. I'm here because I was invited by Daniel. Daniel's face went pale. Actually, Polly, the color draining from his features so quickly that even Rebecca noticed. She turned to her fiancé with a confused smile. Honey, who is this? Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Martin is a colleague from the hospital. I mentioned it casually, but I didn't expect you invited him to our baby shower. Rebecca's voice had gone sharp, the performative sweetness evaporating. Patricia moved closer to Martin, her eyes narrowed. Martin Chun, the malpracticed attorney. My heart skipped. A malpracticed attorney. Martin's smile widened just slightly. I prefer patient advocate, but yes, that's me. He glanced around the room, taking in the expensive decorations, the designer outfits, the champagne. Beautiful party. Really beautiful. Must have cost a fortune. Nobody spoke. The tension in the room had shifted from my humiliation to something else entirely. Something dangerous and unpredictable. Rebecca looked between Daniel and Martin, her hand protectively cradling her belly. I don't understand. Why would Daniel invite you here? Oh, I don't think he meant to, Martin said casually, stepping further into the room. I think it was more of a Freudian slip. The kind of thing that happens when someone's carrying around a very heavy secret and subconsciously wants it to come out. Daniel's jaw clenched. Martin, this isn't the time or place. Oh, I disagree, Martin interrupted smoothly. I think this is exactly the time and place. All these important people gathered together, doctors, medical professionals, people who understand the weight of responsibility. He turned to face Rebecca directly. Your fiancé made a mistake 3 months ago. A significant one. A patient under his care during a routine spinal surgery experienced complications that Daniel failed to monitor properly. The patient is now paralyzed from the waist down. The room erupted, gasps, shocked whispers, someone's champagne flute hitting the floor and shattering. Rebecca staggered back a step, her hand flying to her mouth. Patricia's face had gone from pale to red, rage building behind her eyes. That is a baseless accusation, Patricia hissed. My son is an exemplary surgeon. This is slander. It's documented, Martin said calmly, pulling a folded envelope from his jacket pocket. Hospital records, surgical notes, testimony from the OR nurses who were present. Daniel missed clear signs of spinal cord compression. He was distracted, rushed, and failed to follow protocol. The hospital administration, your department, Patricia, has been trying to bury it quietly. Settlement talks, NDAs, the usual. I stood frozen, my earlier humiliation completely forgotten. This was insane. This was a nightmare unfolding in real time. Daniel's face had gone from pale to gray. You have no right to come here. I have every right, Martin said, his voice hardening. Because that patient, the one who will never walk again, that's my brother. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background music someone had been playing seemed to have stopped. Martin's expression had shifted from calm amusement to something raw and painful. My brother went in for a simple procedure. Herniated disc, routinies, 42 years old. He has 3 kids, had a construction business, and now he's in a wheelchair because your golden boy here was too arrogant to ask for help when things started going wrong. Rebecca's breathing had gone shallow. She looked at Daniel with wide, disbelieving eyes. Tell me he's lying. Daniel, tell me this isn't true. Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He looked to his mother, desperate, but Patricia's face had transformed into something cold and calculating. She wasn't denying it. She was strategizing. This is harassment, Patricia said, her voice like ice. You will leave immediately, or I will call the police. Martin laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Call them, please. I'd love to explain to the authorities why a malpractice attorney showed up at a baby shower. It'll make for great publicity when my case goes to trial. He turned to address the room at large, making eye contact with several of the guests. Any of you work at Metropolitan General? You might want to start paying attention to what's happening in your surgical wing. Several people immediately looked away, suddenly very interested in their shoes. A few began quietly gathering their things. The party was disintegrating in real time. Rebecca turned on Daniel, her voice shaking. How long have you known about this? How long have you been hiding this from me? Becca, I can explain. Daniel reached for her, but she jerked away from his touch. We were handling it. The hospital has lawyers. My mother was managing the situation. It was under control. Under control? Rebecca's voice climbed higher. A man is paralyzed. Daniel, you paralyzed someone, and you didn't tell me. It wasn't like that, Daniel said desperately. There were complications, things that couldn't have been predicted. It's not as simple as he's making it sound. My brother told you he couldn't feel his legs. Martin Cucci, in his voice deadly quiet. He told you twice during recovery. You dismissed it as normal post-surgical numbness. By the time someone else took him seriously, the damage was irreversible. The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. I found myself pressing back against the wall, trying to make myself invisible. This had gone so far beyond my sister's cruelty to me. This was something else entirely. This was how. Patricia stepped forward, trying to regain control. Everyone, please remain calm. This man is clearly emotionally compromised and is making wild accusations. Daniel is one of the finest surgeons at Metropolitan General. Any complications that occurred were due to the inherent risks of surgery, which all patients consent to. He didn't consent to negligence, Martin said, his voice cutting through Patricia's corporate doublespeak. He didn't consent to a surgeon who was sleep-deprived from working back-to-back shifts because your hospital is chronically under. He didn't consent to someone who ignored multiple warning signs because he was too proud to call for a second opinion. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of genuine fear crossing her face before she recovered. You have no proof of any of that. I have the OR logs, Martin said. Daniel had worked 16 hours straight before my brother's surgery. Hospital policy clearly states a maximum of 12. Someone approved the override. Someone in administration. He looked directly at Patricia, someone who prioritizes profit margins over patient safety. The room had gone deathly silent. Even the people who had been edging toward the door had stopped, transfixed by the unfolding disaster. Rebecca's face was streaked with tears now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark tracks down her cheeks. "I need to sit down," she said weakly, and my mother, who had been frozen in shock this entire time, suddenly snapped into action, rushing to guide Rebecca to the nearest chair. But as Rebecca moved, something happened. Her hand flew to her stomach, and her face contorted in pain. "Oh, God," she gasped. "Something's wrong." The room exploded into chaos. Daniel was at Rebecca's side instantly, his legal troubles forgotten in the face of immediate medical crisis. "What kind of pain? Where?" he demanded, his surgeon training taking over. Rebecca's breathing had gone rapid and shallow. "Cramping? Sharp. It hurts." Her face went white, and she looked down. I followed her gaze and felt my own stomach drop. There was blood. Not much, but enough. A dark stain spreading across the white fabric of her dress. "We need to get her to the hospital," Daniel said, his voice suddenly calm and professional in a way that was almost eerie given what had just been revealed about him. Now, Patricia was already on her phone, presumably calling for an ambulance, while my mother hovered uselessly, wringing her hands and making small, distressed sounds. Several guests had pulled out their phones too, some calling for help. Others, I noticed with disgust, likely texting or recording what was happening. And I stood there, pressed against the wall, watching my sister, the sister who had just publicly humiliated me, who had spent years making me feel worthless, doubled over in pain and terror, possibly losing her baby. I should have felt vindicated. Some dark part of me should have felt like this was karma, justice, payback for every cruel word and dismissive gesture. But I didn't. All I felt was a cold, creeping horror and a professional instinct that was suddenly screaming at me to move. I pushed off the wall and crossed the room in 4 long strides, my nursing training overriding every ounce of hurt and anger. "Let me see," I said, kneeling beside Rebecca's chair. Daniel looked up at me, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or relief. Rebecca grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise. "Make it stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please. I can't lose her. I can't." "How far along are you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady and calm even as my heart hammered against my ribs. 28 weeks, Daniel answered when Rebecca couldn't. "Due date is early February." I nodded, doing rapid calculations. 28 weeks. Viable, but risky? Every minute mattered. "Rebecca, I need you to focus on me," I said, making eye contact with her. "We're going to get through this, but I need you to stay as calm as possible. Can you do that?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face, her hands still clutching mine like a lifeline. I looked up at Daniel. "When did the cramping start?" "Just now. Maybe 2 minutes ago." "Any cramping or spotting before today?" "No, nothing. Everything's been perfect." All her checkups, his voice cracked slightly, the professional veneer slipping. I turned to Patricia, who was still on the phone. "How long for the ambulance?" 10 minutes, Patricia said, her face tight with tension. "Maybe longer with traffic." 10 minutes. Too long. I could see Rebecca's breathing becoming more labored, her skin taking on a grayish pallor that I'd seen too many times in the PIC. She was going into shock, whether from blood loss or sheer panic. I couldn't tell yet, but it didn't matter. Both were dangerous. "We need to get her lying down," I said. "Clear that couch." Now, my mother and 2 other women scrambled to move the decorative pillows and presents piled on the large sectional sofa. I helped Rebecca stand, supporting most of her weight as Daniel took her other side. We moved her carefully to the couch, and I grabbed several of the discarded pillows to elevate her feet. "Rebecca, I'm going to check your pulse," I said, my fingers already on her wrist. Too fast. Way too fast. "Daniel, get me a cold, compress kitchen, and someone bring me a clean towel." Several people scattered to follow my instructions. It was strange 30 seconds ago. I'd been the family embarrassment, the dropout, the failure. Now, suddenly, I was the one everyone was listening to. Martin Chun was still standing near the archway, watching with an unreadable expression. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave me a small nod, acknowledgement, maybe even respect. Then he quietly pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. "It hurts," Rebecca gasped, her hand pressed against her abdomen. "It hurts so much." "I know it does," I said softly, keeping my voice steady even though my mind was racing through possibilities: placental abruption, preterm labor, something worse. "Try to breathe slowly, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Can you do that with me?" Rebecca nodded, her eyes locked on mine with desperate trust. The same eyes that had looked at me with contempt less than 10 minutes ago now held nothing but fear and a silent plea. "Save us." Daniel returned with the cold compress and towels, his hands shaking slightly as he handed them to me. I pressed the compress gently to Rebecca's forehead while using one of the towels to carefully assess the bleeding. Not catastrophic, but steady. Too steady. "Has she been under unusual stress lately?" I asked Daniel quietly, not wanting Rebecca to hear but needing the information. Daniel's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward where Martin had disappeared into the hallway. She's been working long hours. Her residency program is demanding. And planning the wedding, the nursery." He trailed off, and I could see the guilt written across his face. The stress he'd caused, the secret he'd been carrying, the bomb that had just exploded in the middle of what should have been a joyful celebration. Any previous complications with the pregnancy? None. Clean ultrasounds? Perfect blood work? She's been textbook perfect. Of course she had been. Rebecca did everything perfectly, or at least she had until her perfect fiancé's perfect career had turned out to be built on a foundation of negligence and cover. Patricia reappeared, her phone still clutched in her hand. "The ambulance is 7 minutes out. They're sending a paramedic unit equipped for obstetric emergencies." I nodded, keeping my attention on Rebecca. Her breathing had steadied slightly under my guidance, but her pulse was still too rapid, and the bleeding hadn't stopped. 7 minutes felt like an eternity. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something," I said gently. "Have you felt the baby move recently, in the last hour?" Her eyes widened with fresh panic. I don't know. There's been so much happening. I wasn't paying attention." She pressed her hand harder against her belly, searching desperately for movement. "I can't tell. There's too much pain. Why can't I tell?" "It's okay," I said quickly, though my own concern was mounting. "The pain can make it hard to distinguish fetal movement. That's normal." It wasn't entirely true. An experienced mother at 28 weeks should be able to feel significant kicks even through discomfort, but I needed her calm. Panic would only make everything worse. Daniel had gone very still beside me. He knew what I was thinking. As a neurosurgeon, he might not deal with obstetrics regularly, but he'd been through enough medical training to understand the implications. "We should do a fetal heart check," he said quietly. "Do you have no?" I cut him off. "We don't have a Doppler here, and we're not going to waste time looking for one. The paramedics will have equipment. Our job right now is to keep her stable until they arrive." My mother had been hovering at the edge of the couch, wringing her hands compulsively. Now she spoke up, her voice thin and strained. "Should we, should we be doing something else? There must be something you can help by keeping everyone calm and making sure the front door is unlocked for the paramedics," I said, perhaps more sharply than I intended. She flinched, but nodded, retreating to do as I'd asked. The room had divided into two groups. Those pressed close, trying to help or at least bear witness, and those who had backed away to the far edges of the space, uncomfortable with the raw medical emergency unfolding before them. Several guests had quietly left altogether. I didn't blame them. This baby shower had turned into a nightmare. Rebecca's grip on my hand suddenly tightened, her nails digging into my skin. "Something's wrong," she gasped. "I can feel it. Something's really wrong." "Stay with me," I commanded, using the firm tone I'd learned from the best ICU nurses. "Rebecca, look at me. Right here. Don't go anywhere in your head. Stay right here with me." Her eyes found mine, glassy with pain and fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "I'm so sorry for what I said. For everything. Please don't let me lose her. Please." The apology hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't the time for emotional processing, wasn't the moment to unpack years of sisterly warfare. But something cracked open in my chest anyway, something raw and complicated and painful. We're going to do everything we can, I told her, and meant it. Whatever existed between us, all the resentment, the hurt, the years of comparison and competition, none of it mattered in this moment. She was my sister. That baby was my niece. And I would be damned if I let either of them slip away while I stood by helplessly. A commotion at the front door announced the arrival of the paramedics. Two of them rushed in with their equipment. A man and a woman, both moving with practiced efficiency. 28 weeks pregnant. Sudden onset of cramping and vaginal bleeding approximately 12 minutes ago. I rattled off as they approached, falling easily into the clinical language of handoff. Patient is tachycardic, showing signs of early shock. No previous pregnancy complications. Bleeding is moderate but steady. The female paramedic, her name tag read Chun, and I wondered distantly if she was related to Martin, knelt beside the couch and immediately began her assessment. "Good work, keeping her calm," she said to me, then turned to Rebecca. "Hi there, Mama. I'm Sarah. We're going to take excellent care of you and your baby. Can you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how bad the pain is?" 8, Rebecca gasped. "Maybe 9? Sarah nodded, already pulling out a portable fetal Doppler. The room held its collective breath as she applied gel to Rebecca's belly and began searching for the heartbeat. The seconds stretched out like hours. I found myself holding my own breath, my hand still clasped in Rebecca's crushing grip. Then it came a rapid, rhythmic, whooshing sound that filled the room like a miracle. The baby's heartbeat, fast but strong, 150 beats per minute, within normal range. The relief that washed over Rebecca's face was almost heartbreaking. She sobbed once, a sound caught between joy and terror. "She's okay. The baby's okay. Heartbeat is strong," Sarah confirmed, though her expression remained professionally neutral. "But we need to get you to the hospital right away. We're going to move you to the stretcher now." The male paramedic had already positioned the gurney beside the couch. Together, they lifted Rebecca with practiced care, Daniel hovering anxiously at her side. As they began securing the straps, Sarah looked up at me. "Are you family?" "Her sister," I said. "I'm also a pediatric ICU nurse at St. Catherine's." Something shifted in Sarah's expression, a recognition, perhaps even respect. "Good. We could use you in the bus if you're willing. Sometimes having a familiar face helps keep patients calm during transport." I glanced at Rebecca, who was looking at me with those desperate, pleading eyes again. Then, at my mother, who seemed torn between wanting to come and being terrified of medical situations. Then Achi Doniel, whose face had gone pale with barely controlled panic. "I'll come," I said. Patricia stepped forward. "I'm coming too. That's my son's child. Only 2 additional passengers," the male paramedic said firmly. "Hospital policy." "Then it should be me and Daniel," Patricia said with the tone of someone used to getting her way. "I'm sure Rebecca would prefer." "I want my sister," Rebecca said, her voice cutting through Patricia's words like a knife. Everyone froze. Rebecca's eyes were still on me, unwavering despite the pain etched across her face. "I want her with me." Patricia's mouth opened and closed. For perhaps the first time in her life, she found herself without a response. Daniel looked between his mother and his fiancé, clearly torn but ultimately knowing there was only one right answer. "Mom, you can meet us at the hospital," he said quietly. "Rebecca needs her sister right now." The words hung in the air with unexpected weight. Patricia's face hardened into a mask of controlled rage, but she stepped back, her hands clenched at her sides. My mother rushed forward to hug me briefly, a rare gesture that felt both comforting and suffocating. "Take care of her," Mom whispered. "Please." I nodded, already moving toward the gurney. The paramedics were efficient, wheeling Rebecca toward the door with Daniel and me following close behind. As we passed through the archway, I saw Martin Chun standing against the wall, his phone now put away. He caught my eye and gave me another small nod. "Your sister's lucky to have you," he said quietly, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't have time to respond. We were already out the door, the cool evening air hitting my face as we approached the ambulance. The lights were already flashing, painting the suburban street in alternating waves of red and blue. The ambulance was cramped with all of us inside. Rebecca on the stretcher, Sarah monitoring her vitals, Daniel pressed against one wall, and me on the small jump seat near Rebecca's head. The male paramedic, whose name I learned was Marcus, took the driver's seat and we lurched into motion with a wail of sirens. "Contractions?" Sarah asked, her hands moving efficiently as she established an IV line. "I don't know," Rebecca gasped. "It just hurts. Constantly." "That's what we're going to figure out," Sarah said calmly. She looked at me. "Talk to her. Keep her focused on something other than the pain." I leaned closer to Rebecca, my hand finding hers again. "Remember when we were kids and we used to play hospital?" I said, reaching for any memory that might ground her. "You always insisted on being the doctor, and I had to be the patient." Rebecca's lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. "You were terrible at playing dead," she whispered. "You kept giggling." "Because you kept checking my pulse wrong," I said. "You'd press so hard I thought you were trying to cut off my circulation." "I was practicing," she managed between breaths. Another small smile, then it vanished as her face contorted again. "Oh God! Another one!" Sarah was already checking the monitor. "Contractions are 4 minutes apart," she said, her tone sharp now. "Marcus, how far out are we?" 6 minutes to Metropolitan General," came the reply from the front. "Make it 4, Sarah said. Daniel had been silent since we'd entered the ambulance, his face a mask of guilt and fear. Now he spoke, his voice rough. "What's happening?" "Is she going into labor?" "Possible preterm labor," Sarah confirmed, not sugarcoating it. "Could also be placental abruption or other complications. The doctors will determine next steps once we arrive." 28 weeks, Daniel said, almost to himself. "If she delivers now, the NICU at Metropolitan is one of the best in the state," I said firmly, cutting off his spiral. 28 weeks isn't ideal, but it's viable. Good outcomes are very possible." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something crumble behind his eyes. "I didn't know," he said quietly, "about Martin's brother. I mean, I knew about the complication, but I didn't know it was his brother until he showed up today." "Not the time, Daniel," I said sharply. "No, I need to say this," he continued, his voice gaining an edge of desperation. "I need Rebecca to know. I need everyone to know. There were complications during the surgery. Things went wrong. But I wasn't negligent. I did everything by the book. Sometimes bad outcomes happen even when you do everything right." Sarah glanced at him, but said nothing, her attention remaining on Rebecca's monitors. The beeping had taken on a more urgent rhythm. Rebecca's eyes had drifted closed, her breathing shallow. "Beck," I said, squeezing her hand. "Stay with me. Don't check out." Her eyes fluttered open. "Tired," she murmured. "So tired." "I know you are, but you need to stay awake," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "Tell me about the nursery. You've been planning it for months. What color did you finally decide on?" "Sage green," she whispered. "With white furniture, and little animal prints on the wall, watercolor style." "That sounds beautiful. What animals?" "Rabbit, deer, a fox." Her voice was getting weaker. "Daniel picked the fox. Blood pressure is dropping," Sarah said, her tone clipped. She was already adjusting the 4, increasing the flow, possible internal bleeding. "Marcus, we need to move." The ambulance surged forward, the siren's wail intensifying. I could feel us taking corners too fast, the whole vehicle swaying with momentum. Rebecca's hand had gone limp in mine. "Becca, come on," I said more urgently. "Tell me about the fox. What does it look like?" No response. Her eyes had closed again. "Rebecca," Daniel's voice cracked with panic. He tried to move closer, but Sarah held up a hand to stop him. "Sir, I need you to stay back," she said. Then, to me, "Is she responsive?" I squeezed Rebecca's hand hard, probably too hard. "Rebecca, if you don't wake up right now, I'm going to tell everyone about that time in 8th grade when you—" Her eyes snapped open. "Don't you dare!" she breathed. Relief flooded through me. There she is. Stay awake. We're almost there. What happened in 8th grade? Daniel asked, grasping for anything to keep the conversation going, to keep Rebecca conscious. Nothing, Rebecca said weakly, the ghost of her usual bossy tone returning. Absolutely nothing. She got caught trying to sneak into a college party, I said, and despite everything, the blood, the fear, the crisis, I felt a small smile tug at my lips, wore our mom's heels and a dress she borrowed from a senior. Made it exactly 3 steps past the door before someone realized she was 14. You promise never to tell anyone, Rebecca said, and the fact that she could still muster indignation in her current state was almost funny. Yeah, well, you promised not to tell Mom about the time I crashed her car, I countered, but you did that anyway. You crashed into a mailbox, Rebecca murmured. How could I not tell? It was a very small mailbox. It belonged to the mayor. Despite everything, Daniel let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a sob. Sarah even smiled slightly as she continued her work, her hands never stopping their efficient movements. The ambulance suddenly slowed, taking a sharp turn, coming up on Metropolitan General. Marcus called back. 30 seconds. Sarah hit a button on her radio. Metropolitan IRD. This is Unit 12, incoming with a 28-week pregnant female, suspected preterm labor, possible abruption. Patient is hypotensive and showing signs of shock. ATA 10 seconds. A crackle of static, then a calm voice. Copy that, Unit 12. Trauma Bay 3 is clear. OB team is standing by. The ambulance came to a stop with a lurch. The back doors flew open, revealing the bright lights of the emergency bay and a team of people in scrubs already moving toward us. Among them, I recognized Dr. Elena Reeves, one of the best OB-GYNs in the city. Rebecca Hart, Doctor, Reeves said, all business as she approached the stretcher. I'm Dr. Reeves. We're going to take excellent care of you. The transition from ambulance to hospital was a blur of motion, Rebecca being whisked out of the vehicle, monitors being transferred, Sarah rattling off vitals and history to the receiving team. Daniel and I followed close behind as they wheeled Rebecca through the automatic doors and into the harsh fluorescent brightness of the ER. Family? A nurse appeared at my elbow, clipboard in hand. Sister, I said, and that's her fiancé. You'll need to wait in the consultation room while we assess her. Someone will come get you as soon as we know more. I'm a doctor, Daniel said, his voice taking on an edge of authority. I work here. I want to be with her. The nurse's expression hardened slightly. Hospital policy, Dr. Hart. You know that no family members in trauma situations, especially when they're medical staff. Too much emotional involvement compromises care. Daniel looked ready to argue, but Dr. Reeves cut him off. Daniel, let us do our jobs. You know she's in good hands. There was something in her tone, not unkind, but firm, and something else too. A knowing quality that made me wonder if Dr. Reeves had heard about the situation with Martin Chun's brother. We watched helplessly as they wheeled Rebecca through a set of double doors marked authorized personnel only. The last thing I saw was my sister's pale face, her eyes searching for mine one last time before the door swung shut. The consultation room was small and sterile, with uncomfortable plastic chairs, outdated magazines, and a box of tissues on a side table that had clearly seen a lot of use. Daniel collapsed into one of the chairs, his head in his hands. I remained standing, unable to sit still, my nursing scrubs from work still in my car, and my pale blue dress now stained with blood. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. Finally, Daniel spoke. Thank you, he said quietly, for what you did back there, in the ambulance. You kept her conscious. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to absolve him of anything. Wasn't ready to play nice just because we were both scared for Rebecca. I know what you must think of me, he continued, after what Martin said. But I need you to understand. I don't need to understand anything, I said, my voice harder than I intended. The only thing I care about right now is Rebecca and that baby. So do I, Daniel said, his voice rising slightly. You think I don't care? You think I'm not terrified right now? I think you made choices that put your career above patient safety, I said, turning to face him. I think you let your mother cover up a catastrophic mistake. And I think my sister has been killing herself trying to live up to your family's impossible standards while you've been lying to her. Daniel flinched as if I'd slapped him. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I took a step closer. I work in a PICU. Daniel, I see what happens when doctors make mistakes. I see the kids who end up paying for it, and I see the families destroyed by it. That surgery was complicated, Daniel said, his voice shaking. The patient had abnormal anatomy, things that didn't show up on the imaging. When I realized something was wrong, I called for help immediately. I did everything right. Except you were working hour 16 of what should have been a 12-hour maximum, I shot back. Except you didn't document the warning signs properly. Except your mother made sure the whole thing got buried under NDAs and settlement offers instead of proper review. How do you know all that? Daniel's face had gone pale. Because Martin laid it out for everyone at the baby shower, I said. Or did you already forget that part? That whole room full of your colleagues and friends now knows what happened. Your mother can't bury it anymore. Daniel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. My mother was trying to protect me. To protect our family, she was doing what any parent would do. No, I said firmly. What any parent would do is make sure their child takes responsibility for their mistakes and learns from them. What your mother did was teach you that consequences are for other people, he stared at me, his jaw working, clearly wanting to argue but finding no words. The tension between us was thick enough to cut. The door opened, cutting off whatever he might have said. But it wasn't a doctor or nurse. It was Patricia, her face a mask of cold fury, with my mother trailing anxiously behind her. What is happening? Patricia demanded, where is Rebecca? Why has no one updated me? They just took her back, I said. Dr. Reeves is with her? They're assessing the situation now. Patricia's eyes swept over me, taking in my blood-stained dress, my disheveled hair. And you were in the ambulance. Why wasn't I called immediately upon arrival? Because they're busy trying to save your grandchild, I said, not bothering to hide my irritation. Don't take that tone with me, Patricia snapped. I have every right to be here. More right than you, actually. This is my son's family. It's my sister, I said, my voice low and dangerous. And in case you forgot, she specifically asked for me to be with her, not you. Patricia's face flushed red. Because you manipulated the situation. You always have to make everything about yourself, don't you? This is exactly why your family has always— Mom, stop, Daniel said warily. Please. Not now. Not now. Patricia whirled on him. When? Then? When should we discuss the fact that that man, that lawyer, ambushed you at what should have been a private family celebration? When should we discuss the fact that he had no right to air private medical matters in front of— He had every right, a voice said from the doorway. Wheel turned. Martin Chun stood there, still in the same button-down shirt from the party, his expression unreadable. What are you doing here? Patricia hissed. This is a private area. I'll have security. I came to check on Rebecca, Martin said calmly. Despite what you think of me, I didn't intend for things to go the way they did. I wanted to confront Daniel, yes, but not like that, and certainly not at the cost of his fiancée's health. How noble of you, Patricia said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You destroy my son's reputation, traumatize a pregnant woman, and now you show up here pretending to care. I do care, Martin said, and something in his voice made me believe him. My brother is paralyzed because of negligence. That's a fact, not an opinion, but I'm not a monster. I don't want to see anyone else hurt. Your brother's situation is tragic, Patricia said, her voice hardening into her administrator tone, but it was a complication of surgery, not negligence. The hospital has thoroughly reviewed the hospital that you run, Martin interrupted, the hospital that has a vested interest in protecting its star neurosurgeon and avoiding a massive lawsuit. Forgive me if I don't trust your thorough review. Daniel had sunk back into his chair, his head in his hands again. My mother stood near the wall, looking like she desperately wanted to be anywhere else, and I stood between them all, feeling like I'd stumbled into someone else's nightmare. This isn't the place for this, I said, my voice cutting through their argument. My sister is in there possibly losing her baby. Can we please just ... Not here. Not now. Martin's expression softened. You're right. I'm sorry. He looked at Daniel. For what it's worth, I hope everything turns out okay. I mean that. Daniel didn't look up, didn't respond. Martin nodded once and turned to leave, but paused in the doorway. The nurse is Rebecca's sister, he asked, looking at me. Yes, I said. You're good at what you do, he said. I could tell in the ambulance. Your sister's lucky to have you. Before I could respond, he was gone. Patricia immediately turned her fury on Daniel. You invited him, she said, her voice low and dangerous. You invited that man to your baby shower? I didn't mean to, Daniel said miserably. We ran into each other at the hospital cafeteria. He was visiting his brother. We talked. I was trying to, I don't know. Apologize? Explain? It was eating me alive, Mom. The whole situation. And he seemed ... human. So when he asked what I had going on this weekend, I mentioned the shower. I didn't think he'd actually come. You didn't think? Patricia repeated. That's the problem, Daniel. You never think about consequences. Just like during that surgery, Patricia, my mother interjected suddenly, surprising everyone. Maybe we should all take a breath. Patricia turned her cold gaze on my mother. Excuse me. I just mean, we're all scared right now, Mom said, her voice trembling slightly but determined. Fighting isn't going to help Rebecca or the baby. For a moment, I thought Patricia was going to tear into my mother too, but something in Mom's expression, a rare moment of backbone, made her pause. Patricia's mouth pressed into a thin line, and she turned away, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the head of OB, she said. We need answers, and we need them now. That's not how emergency medicine works, I said, but she was already dialing, already using her administrative power to push through the normal channels. 20 minutes crawled by, then 30. Patricia had disappeared down the hallway, presumably to find someone to intimidate. My mother sat quietly in one of the chairs, her hands folded in her lap, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Daniel hadn't moved from his position, head in hands, the picture of a man coming apart at the seams. I paced, 4 steps, one direction. Turn, 4 steps back. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The antiseptic smell of the hospital was both familiar and suffocating. I'd spent countless hours in hospitals, but never like this. Never as the scared family member waiting for news about someone I loved, despite everything complicated between us. She'll be okay, my mother said suddenly, her voice soft. Rebecca's strong. She's always been strong. Being strong doesn't prevent placental abruption, I said, more harshly than I meant to, or preterm labor, or any of the dozen other things that could be going wrong right now. Mom flinched but didn't back down. I know that. I just ... I need to believe she'll be okay, that the baby will be okay. I stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. She'd aged since I'd seen her last. New lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hands were trembling slightly where they clutched her purse. Mom, I started, then stopped, not sure what I wanted to say. You were amazing today, she said, meeting my eyes. The way you took charge, kept Rebecca calm. I was so proud of you. The words hit me unexpectedly hard. When was the last time my mother had said she was proud of me? I couldn't remember. I was just doing my job, I said, my throat tight. No, Mom said firmly. You were doing what you were meant to do. And I'm sorry. Sorry for what? For not seeing it before, for letting your father and me get so caught up in Rebecca's path that we didn't appreciate yours, for making you feel like nursing was less than. I blinked back sudden tears. Mom, we don't have to do this now. Yes, we do, she said, standing up and crossing to me, because I've been a terrible mother to you. I've compared you to Rebecca your whole life. I've made you feel inadequate when you're anything but. And watching you today, seeing what you can do, how you saved your sister ... Dobe quotes, her voice broke. I'm so sorry. Before I could respond, she pulled me into a hug, tight and fierce and desperate. I stood frozen for a moment, then my arms came up to hug her back. We stood there in that sterile consultation room, holding each other, years of hurt beginning to crack open between us. The door opened. We pulled apart quickly as Dr. Reeves entered, still in her surgical scrubs, a paper mask pulled down around her neck. Her expression was carefully neutral, the face doctors put on when they have to deliver complicated news. "Rebecca is stable," she said immediately, and the relief that crashed through the room was almost palpable. Daniel's head snapped up. Mom's hand found mine and squeezed. "But we have a serious situation." Dr. Reeves gestured for us all to sit. Patricia reappeared as if summoned, slipping into the room and taking a position behind Daniel's chair, her hand on his shoulder. "Rebecca has what we call a placental abruption," Dr. Reeves began. "The placenta has partially separated from the uterine wall. She's stable for now, but she's lost a significant amount of blood. We've given her transfusions and medications to stop the bleeding and prevent contractions." "What's the prognosis?" Patricia asked, her administrator voice firmly in place. "If we can keep the pregnancy stable for another few days, even another week, it dramatically improves the baby's chances," Dr. Reeves said. "Every day matters at this stage. However, if the bleeding resumes or if Rebecca goes into active labor despite the medications, we'll have no choice but to deliver." "At 28 weeks," I said quietly. "Yes. Which, as you know, carries risks." Dr. Reeves looked at me with professional respect. "But our NICU is excellent. Survival rates at 2 and 8 weeks are around 90%, and the majority of babies do well long-term with proper care." "What caused it?" Daniel asked, his voice hoarse. "The abruption? What caused it?" Dr. Reeves chose her words carefully. "Placental abruption can have many causes: trauma, high blood pressure, substance use, or sometimes no clear cause at all. In Rebecca's case, ... double quotes." She paused. "Did something happen today? Something stressful or traumatic?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. The silence was deafening. Daniel's face had gone gray. Patricia's grip on his shoulder tightened visibly. My mother looked between all of us, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. "There was an ... incident," I said finally, "at the baby shower. A confrontation. Rebecca became very upset." Dr. Reeves nodded slowly, her expression giving nothing away. "Extreme stress can sometimes be a trigger, particularly in combination with other factors. Rebecca mentioned she's been working long hours during her residency." "Yes," Daniel said quietly, "she's been pushing herself hard. The combination of physical exhaustion, stress, and an acute emotional trauma could have contributed," Dr. Reeves said. "But I want to be clear, this is not anyone's fault. Sometimes these things just happen." But her eyes, when they flicked to Daniel, told a different story. She knew. Of course she knew. The hospital gossip mill would have already churned through what happened at the party. And Dr. Reeves was senior enough to have heard about Daniel's malpractice situation before today. "Can we see her?" I asked. "She's asking for you," Dr. Reeves said, looking at me specifically. "We're moving her to a private room in the high-risk OB ward. She needs rest and calm. 2 visitors at a time. And I need everyone to keep things very low-key. No stress, no difficult conversations, no drama. Her body needs to heal, and the baby needs time to develop." "I'll go," I said immediately. "Me too," Daniel said, starting to stand. Dr. Reeves held up a hand. "Actually, Rebecca specifically asked to see her sister first." "Alone?" Daniel froze halfway out of his chair. "What?" "She didn't say," Dr. Reeves replied calmly. "But those are her wishes, and I'm going to respect them. The patient gets to decide who she sees and when." Patricia's face had gone rigid with barely contained outrage. "That's absurd. Daniel is her fiancé, the father of her child. He has every right. He has the rights that Rebecca grants him," Dr. Reeves said, her voice taking on an edge of steel. "This is her medical care, her body, her choice. If she wants to see her sister first, that's what's going to happen." I stood, my legs slightly unsteady. "Which room?" "4th floor, room 412. The nurse will let you in." Dr. Reeves looked at me intently. "Remember, keep it calm. Low stress. She needs to rest. I nodded and headed for the door, feeling Daniel's eyes on my back. As I reached the hallway, I heard Patricia's voice, low and angry. This is completely inappropriate. I'm going to speak to the department head about this. But I was already walking away, following the signs toward the elevators, my heart pounding in my chest. What did Rebecca want to say to me that she couldn't say in front of Daniel? What had changed in the hours since she'd publicly humiliated me? The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt eternal. The doors opened onto a quieter ward, the lights dimmed for evening, nurses moving efficiently between rooms. I found 412 and knocked softly before entering. Rebecca lay in the hospital bed, looking small and fragile in a way I'd never seen her before. The confident, accomplished doctor who'd stood in our parents' living room mocking my career was gone. In her place was my older sister, just my sister, pale and scared, and hooked up 2 monitors that beeped softly in the quiet room. Her eyes opened when I entered, and fresh tears immediately spilled down her cheeks. "Hey!" I said softly, crossing to her bedside. "How are you feeling?" "Like I almost lost everything," she whispered. "Like I might still lose everything." I pulled the visitor's chair close and sat down, taking her hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. "Dr. Reeves says you're stable." "That's good news." "For now," Rebecca said. "But she also said I might go into labor at any moment, that the abruption could get worse, that my baby might have to be born 3 months early because I ... She stopped, her voice breaking. "Because of what happened at the party," I finished gently. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "This is my fault. I did this. I was so cruel to you. And then everything fell apart. And the stress ... Dr. Reeves won't say it directly, but I know the stress triggered this. My stress, which means I put my baby at risk because I couldn't control myself." "Rebecca, no, let me finish," she said, gripping my hand tighter. "I need to say this. I need you to hear this." She took a shaky breath. "I've been awful to you. Not just today. For years. Since you left pre-med, I've treated you like a failure, like you were less than me. And it was never about you." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. This felt important, necessary, even like something that had been building for a very long time. "It was about me," Rebecca continued, her voice thick with emotion, "about my own insecurities, my own fears. You had the courage to walk away from something that was making you miserable. You chose a different path, one that actually made you happy. And I couldn't do that. I was too scared, too worried about what everyone would think, what Mom and Dad would say, what it would mean for my perfect plan." "You love medicine?" I said quietly. "You always have." "I love parts of it," she admitted, "but the residency, ... it's killing. I work 18-hour days, I barely see Daniel. I'm exhausted all the time. I cry in supply closets. And I keep pushing through because I told myself that's what dedication looks like. That's what excellence requires." She laughed bitterly. "But watching you today, seeing you take charge in that ambulance, the way you knew exactly what to do, the way people listened to you, ... double." She shook her head. "You're not less than me. You never were. If anything, you're better. You chose authenticity over approval. And I've been punishing you for it because I couldn't face my own choices." I felt my own tears starting now, years of hurt and resentment cracking open. "You made me feel worthless," I said, my voice breaking. "Every family gathering, every comment about my less demanding job, every time you introduced me to your friends with that tone ... It made me question everything. Made me wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake." "I know," Rebecca sobbed. "I know, and I'm so sorry. You didn't make a mistake. You made the right choice for you. I made the choices I thought I was supposed to make. I got engaged to Daniel because he's perfect on paper. Neurosurgeon, good family, exactly what everyone expected. But I don't know if I ever asked myself if he was perfect for me." "Do you love him?" I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know anymore," she finally said. I thought I did. But finding out about that patient, about his mother covering it up, about the lies. She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. How do you marry someone when you don't know if you can trust them? How do you raise a child with someone who might put their ego over doing the right thing? I didn't have an answer for that. It wasn't my place to tell her what to do with her relationship. What do you want? I asked instead. Not what Daniel wants, or Patricia wants, or Mom and Dad want. What do you want? Rebecca closed her eyes, fresh tears leaking out. I want my baby to be okay. That's the only thing that matters right now. Everything else. She opened her eyes and looked at me. Everything else, I need time to figure out. But I know one thing for certain. What's that? I want you in my life, she said. Really, in my life? Not as an obligation or someone to compete with. As my sister. My real sister. I want us to start over. If you'll let me, if you can forgive me. The question hung between us, weighted with years of pain and resentment and hurt. Part of me wanted to hold on to that hurt, to make her work for forgiveness, to punish her the way she'd punished me. But looking at her lying in that hospital bed, scared and vulnerable and genuinely remorseful, I couldn't do it. I forgive you, I said, and meant it. But we need to actually change this. Not just say we will actually do it. No more comparisons, no more competing, no more trying to one-up each other. Deal, Rebecca said, squeezing my hand, and I want you involved with the baby. As her aunt, I want her to know you, to learn from you. You're going to be such an amazing influence in her life. Let's focus on getting her here healthy first, I said, but I felt warmth spreading through my chest. An aunt. I was going to be an aunt. A soft knock interrupted us. A nurse poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone very insistent downstairs about seeing you, Patricia Hochchi. She's persistent. Rebecca's face tightened. Tell her I'm resting and can't have visitors right now. What about Daniel? I asked gently. He's really worried about you. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Can you tell him I'll see him tomorrow? I just I need tonight to process everything, to think. I'm not ready to face him yet. I nodded. This was her choice, her boundary. I'll tell him, thank you, she said, for everything today.